Right, it's time to have a look at this Quickstarter guide. Obviously, it is a big course that you've got here. I didn't think there was any way around that. It wasn't actually my intention. My intention when doing a Grandmaster of Gambit's repertoire was like, yeah, okay, well done and buying this course. Let's keep it easy, nice, fun ideas, bang, 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 checkmate, move on. But obviously, that you with opening theory, you do have to go into some detail, and because a lot of the lines are tactical, hence the videos are very long, longer than I'd normally wish to do. But I think that was important to show those lines. And my general suggestion to you guys when you're trying to learn the course, I think it's I think it's a good course. I'm very proud of it, as I always am. I'm a bit of a perfectionist to the annoyance of I expect a lot of people who work with me. They're like, "Oh, Simon, just get it done." I'm like, "Oh no," So I apologise to those guys. But yeah, I mean, I think the way you should learn this course is, if you're struggling with time, just try to do like an hour or so a day or every other day. So some of the videos are an hour long, but they will teach you the whole line. And once you watch the video, then you have to do the move trainer. So it's going to take you a while, but if you put like, I don't know, like 5-6 hours away, you could get this course done in a week. You could get this course done in a month. So 5-6 hours a week in a month's time, you should have a great idea of all this with the videos and Move Trainer. But try to do just 1 hour videos at a time. You can even break it up into 2 sittings, and then make sure you go to the Move Trainer, try out those ideas, and once you've got all that knowledge, go and play Blitz. Very important to test the ideas out. And if you're getting in any troubles, go back to the course. So that's my overview. But this quick starter is aimed at just giving you everything in an hour, under an hour even. And I want to just show you the main ideas. So this, I feel, is a good starting point if you're not sure what you're trying to do. And maybe even if you've looked at everything, it's hopefully a good overview. Well, after our move e4, in this aggressive course, we are really concentrating on black's 4 major options. So what to do against e5, what to do against e6, the French, the Caro, and the Sicilian. And these are really black's 4 main moves in the opening. Of course, there's other options. We're going to cover that in the next installment of this Grandmaster Gambits, but I think literally 25 or whatever hours of video it's going to be is plenty. Let's not go completely insane, right? So those other lines we will look at another course, but this one will be we'll basically cover you for all the main ideas. Now let's start with e5. Let's dive into this one. Now we're going knight to f3, and now knight to c6 is the main move that we need to cover. Now, the next main move here is going to be the Petrov, knight to f6. What about the other options? Well, the other options are not very worrying, really, apart from these 2 main moves. If black doesn't bring his knight out, then he's generally just going to be worse, and we don't have to do anything extravagant. I suppose some of the lines in this course you could say are extravagant, but they're a load of fun. So if he goes d6, trying to get I always get these mixed up, don't I? So there's the Petrov, which is knight f6. Why can I never get this name right? Oh, my words. Oh, come on, Simon, you did this earlier on. Doesn't matter. The Philidor. We're not going to play the more commonly idea of d4. We're now sticking with bishop c4. And against e5, e4, e5, this is generally our stage 1 idea, is e4, knight f3, bishop c4, because bishop c4 gives us more gambit and attacking possibilities because f7 is weak. Now, what to do against this? Well, I feel bishop e7 is the most natural move to play. If h6, really overly worried, this is clearly a move that we shouldn't concern about because black's just moving his pawns, and now we should strike with d4. And now, if black ever takes on d4, something I think well worth thinking about in a lot of positions, and this goes to a key point, often when the sequence occurs, is the move c3, keeping it gambit styling. Now, taking on d4 is fine, but because black has like kind of wasted a move with h6 and not developed a piece, I like c3. And after takes, we can get a third piece into the game, 3 pieces developed, and with queen b3 coming next, castles, and then the opening move e5, opening the position, great play. So d6, bishop c4, h6 is just a bad move. Black should really develop a piece here. Again, in the main courses, we look at any other lines that are not covered here, but they're very unlikely you're going to get them, so let's not worry ourselves too much. But bishop e7 looks normal, and now I feel it's time to play d4, and this is where we're not going to get a gambit, because after pawn takes d4 now, c3 is interesting, but compared to the last position, we have to think case to case in the gambit repertoire. Black's played a developing move rather than an irrelevant pawn move. So knight takes d4 is our suggested way of playing, and we go into a kind of normal now Philidor position, and the way that we're aiming to develop is with bishop f4. And white has a small advantage in these positions, and very nice activity. Black will try to do something on the queen side with b5 or with d5, but as long as we keep an eye for those moves, we can continue in a nice, very active way. And as we see in the theory, the simplest way to play this, you can experiment by castling queenside if you want to, but again, in these lines where there's a simple way to get a good, active, better position, we might as well do that. And in these lines, we're going to castle kingside generally. If b5 is ever threatened, let's go a4 to stop that one. We've got to not, I mean, a gambit course, we are thinking a lot about our own ideas, but let's stop our opponent's ideas. After a4, I like tucking the bishop on a2, where it gets out of the way of any attacks, you know, a knight coming to e5, a pawn coming to d5. And later on, when we got all this development, we can move our queen to connect our rooks on d2 probably. And then I like the plan of f4 and e5, or f4 and f5. So then our bishop can come to h2 after h3, or even just drop to e3. And again, it's just very simple moves. Now in the Philidor, another line we maybe should mention after bishop c4 is knight to f6. And in actual fact, there's quite a rare option now, and that is d4. And this is a very fun option. And this is actually could now go into a Petrov, where we looked at the kind of positions where we can take on d4 a minute ago. And if black in these positions grabs on e4, he's really risking things, as queen e2 gives us great gambit play. With castles coming and a rook to e1, I don't like black's position here. Black's in serious trouble. So after knight to f3, that's d6 covered, maybe one of the more sensible of black's sidelines. Now f5, the Latvian gambit, is simply bad. We just take on f5, and e4 is the only way to try. We come in with knight e5, threatening the check here, which must be stopped. And now our suggestion is bishop e2 with the discombobulator bishop h5. And we're often combining this with d3, and black is really struggling already after this very simple move. We're not going to go into this anymore, because the chances of you getting the Latvian, unless your opponent is completely smashed, is very low. Now, d5 is the elephant gambit. Some people think this is, well, it's a load of rubbish. I'm going to say, do people think this is better than the Latvian or not? It doesn't matter, it's crap. And in this line, our main suggestion is just again to take on e5, because this is just the way to play here. I mean, you can take the other pawn, they're both actually good, But this one I like. It's quite simple. As after bishop d6, we just go d4. And now when black wins the pawn back, the reason we're going this way is we're not trying to necessarily hang on to a pawn, which you could do, but it's a gambit repertoire, so we don't mind getting, giving back the pawn. And now the point here is bishop c4, and if bishop takes e5, queen h5, and this gives us an advantage with these two threats, and our bishop is very good in these positions. So again, after knight to f3, all these moves now covered, d6, d5, f5. What about, before we move on to knight c6, what about knight to f6, the super solid Petrov variation? Well, I think one thing you'll be very pleased to know is that it's not super solid the way we play it. And when black plays this move, he wants to get a nice symmetrical structure, no tactics, risk-free. We're not taking on e5, the main move. We're going d4. And throughout this course, d4 is one of our preferred moves to open up lines and to get the attack. And now black has two options. Knight takes e4 or pawn takes d4. Now, maybe knight takes e4 is more critical. So let's come to that later on. If e takes d4 here, we just play e5. And now knight must come to e4. And after queen takes d4, we get a very simple and nice game. I don't think black should play this way in actual fact. I mean, I know Karpov played it against Kasparov once, but I don't think it would be repeated nowadays, just because it's a very easy position for white to play, meaning we don't even have to challenge ourselves to remember the right moves. Black really has to play d5 now, otherwise it can get worse and worse. And now we simply take, and we do get the symmetrical position. Maybe a Petrov player is like, right, I want a symmetrical position, I'll go for this. But after knight to c3, it's just so easy for us to develop. The key point when our queen is attacked to come to f4. And this places the queen on an aggressive square. And we have our pieces coming generally to e3, to e2. Generally, we're castling queenside when the rook is lovely. Our bishop generally comes to d3. And black's, again, a little bit discombobulated here, meaning his pieces are getting in the way of each other. For example, this knight is in the way of the bishop, in the way of the queen. When we castle queenside, we've got pressure there. And this is just such an easy position and fun position of white to play. You don't even need to know too much theory here. You develop your pieces to normal squares, you castle your king, and you attack. Easy. One little point I would say is that if black does castle queenside, do remember this queen a4 move. That's a great way, in combination with the bishop attacking a7, to attack over there. If he castles kingside, your attack should play itself. So if we go back to knight to f6, d4, I feel that the main line, knight takes e4, is more normal. And now we're going to play the bold, the critical, and the fun move, and the shocking move, pawn takes pawn. Now, the player of the black pieces will be much more expecting the bishop to come to this square, which is more main line. But we're not doing that. We are playing pawn takes pawn because this is so much fun. And here, black has two options. He can go the logical bishop c5 move, which again I feel is critical, or he can try to bail out with d5, this solid option. This may actually be the line that Kasparov played. But again, after d5, no, it wasn't. That was actually the old line. d5, the move to remember here is Jabava's idea of bishop e3. This stops the bishop coming here, and where this can trick a lot of Petrov players out, and we want to just play, again, normal developing moves, knight bd2, in some cases c3, queen c2 castles, bishop d3, get rid of that knight there, get rid of that knight there in the middle, and fun and games will occur. With us just developing quickly. One of the things you'll find in this course that quite regularly happens is the fact that we have this pawn on e5, and this is something that we've done on purpose for myself and Richard. We've tried to give you a lot of positions where you keep the pawn there. One of my inspirations for this personally was when I did the Art of the Attack course, looking at many games of Alexander Alekhine. I think his Russian pronunciation is Aliekin, but Alekhine, I'm sure you're aware he is. Many of his great attacking games was when he had a pawn on e5, because you can build up your attack behind that pawn, and it stops black from getting pieces mainly on the f6 square to defend h7. So this is something we've tried to do. We try to get a pawn here in a lot of positions to give you attacking options. Okay, so now after the Petrov d4, quite shocking. The shocking idea, really this one, bishop c5 is key. So let's go to that now. And now the fun keeps on going with bishop c4, a remarkably interesting and dynamic move, where black is probably okay, but he's got to dodge so many bullets. And we saw even Giri falling prey to this idea. Totally sound, of course. We're not giving you any dodgy gambits. When the key line goes knight takes f2, now we take on f7, and we play queen d5 check. The king should come out. If it comes back, just bishop g5 is very, very good for white. So it should come out. And now we take on c5. Black has to take here. Knight c3. And we're a whole rook down here. But that's where the good news ends for black. We have a lot of very strong threats, of course, because of the king. And we're very likely to win this knight back. Our main ideas in this position include getting our queen to a better square, and c4 is the one to go to. So you can try to get on this diagonal towards the king, so that you can support knight h4 check. And the other idea is very important, is knight d5, so that the knight can go to f4 in some lines, so that the knight can try to win some material back on c7, so that if the king goes to h7, we have the winning move, often knight f6 check, pawn takes, and then queen f7 checkmate. And do remember, these are your two sort of critical ways to start, because you want to chase that king, queen c4 and knight d5. But after these two moves, we then generally play bishop e3, so the knight can't get out, castle's queenside, and we're going to win that knight back. So we're only the exchange down. Loads of fun, this. Okay, so that's really the Petrov, I would say, covered there with knight to f6 in this quick starter guide. Of course, if you want the detail, there's plenty of that later on, so you can go there. Now the main move, knight to c6, hoping for a Raul Lopez, which we're not going to allow. We're not going for long maneuvering games against this. We're actually going in these lines for a very dynamic and sharp plan, and that is with bishop c4. The good old Italian, but this takes aim at f7. But in some ways, it's not the Italian, because we're getting quick development. We're not going for a maneuvering game. We're going for d4, either on the next move or the move after, depending on black's reply. Black's reply will either be knight to f6 or bishop c5 in the majority of cases. Bishop e7, something passive like this. Well, I would now recommend we go d4 anyway. d4 is what's making this gambit course a gambit course. And in this particular situation, if black captures, we can now go back to the c3 idea to keep it gambit style. And this is, again, like a very good Evans gambit here. So after bishop c4, what about the two main moves? Well, the two main moves, knight f6 or bishop c5, are key. Now against knight to f6, we don't want to castle now because black is immediately threatening our pawn, and he can actually take that pawn, and he will take that pawn in a lot of lines. So we should react by playing d4 immediately here. If the bishop comes to c5, which we'll come to in a second, we can castle first before playing our pawn sack line because there's nothing on pre. But against knight f6, d4. And now black really has to take this one, and here we do castle, and this is the Max Lang attack, one of the very famous, very popular at club level variations, and we're going to prove with new analysis, old analysis, that white is absolutely fine. It's funny, when I was doing a stream and I was mentioning this, a couple of people said this is refuted. I'm like, no, it's not. It's clearly not refuted. We're showing you that black, if he plays perfectly, might be able to get equality, but not simple equality in a couple of lines. But that's with perfect defense from black, and he's got to find the moves. Otherwise, he's in trouble. Now here, two main moves. You take on e4, or you play bishop c5. Now, bishop c5 is actually one of these lines which someone in one of my Twitch chats says is a refutation. Not true. We now play the Max Lang. This is the Max Lang proper, e5. When black has to play d5, and now we chop, 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 and here we're playing bishop g5, the modern approach. The reason I think people thought this was refuted, because the old approach playing this check is not as effective as bishop g5. Bishop g5 leads us to a very sharp position where the black king is in more danger than the white king. So that is one very nice way of playing, very sharp way of playing, and we get some very exciting positions. Things to bear in mind in this position is our knight can often try to travel to f6. We do have rook here check, and we keep a nice attack. Our king is safer than our opponents. Now the other way black can play in this position after castles is by taking on e4, and this has also been suggested in a number of places. We go rook e1, and after d5 we take on d5. A little bit of tactics that you need to know. Knight to c3, and here the queen has three main squares: a5, h5, or d8. Other squares are looked at in the main course, of course. Now with queen to d8, which is the third most popular option, we've got to basically decide what do we take back on e4 with. Now generally we take back the knight because we want this knight to threaten things and have the possibility of coming to g5. But the main idea we're going to see when we do take with the knight in these positions is actually to follow up with bishop g5 and play tactically, play in a way to stop black from castling. Now if black retreats his queen, he's got better defenses in the middle because he's holding the center of the board, especially e7. So in this case, this move is not as effective because after bishop e7, we normally want to meet this with bishop g5, and this would be very nice if the queen is somewhere else. But when the queen is here, black is defending e7 better, so it's not as effective. So in this one case here, when the queen goes back to d8, we take with the rook on e4 check. And after bishop e7, we simply play knight takes d4. And the other reason we're doing it this way is that the rook can really annoy that queen. And after f5, we go rook f4. And we're preparing to shatter black's pawn structure with knight takes c6, leading to an advantage for us. And again, there's more theory on this later on. Now, the other way the black queen can go, because obviously it's quite passive on d8, he can play it like a Scandinavian and move it as far out the way as possible. And in this case, what do we take on e4 with? Well, now that e7 is not as well defended, we take with a knight. And the other reason is, if we ever take on d4 with a rook here, we're not attacking the queen. So knight takes is totally true, totally right way to play. And after the main move, bishop e6, where black is threatening to castle, we are now playing a modern and a little twist on the position, not knight g5. We're playing bishop d2, and we're asking that queen, where are you going to go? We're trying to move that queen to a less safe place than where it is at the moment. So, for example, after queen d5, recentralizing, another key thing to remember in these particular positions is bishop g5. We don't want the black king to castle. In some other cases, if the queen went somewhere much more passive, we're actually going knight g5 because we're very happy to take here and bring the other knight in because black's queen is really out of the way. But in this case, because the queen is centralized, let's stop it from castling. And something to remember when the queen is either on d5 or h5 is bishop f6. We can't allow the king to castle. We would be worse then. But in this structure, we keep the pressure and we can win our pawn back whilst keeping the black king in the middle of the board. Of course, this bishop can't be taken because of the knight fork. So the other way that the queen can go, and let's run through these moves again in case you're unsure. Against knight f6, we are playing d4. And after the capture here, we're castling. Now, bishop c5 is one main move when we push on in the center. Knight takes e4, maybe even more recommended, more common. Rook e1. And now we have to keep playing tactically. We're using 2 pins with this move. And now queen h5 has been recommended. And here, this is the most ambitious move from black and being recommended by Gustafsson, amongst others in his course. And the good thing about us is we've got access to those courses and we found ways to improve on them from the white side. Hindsight is a lovely thing. And against this move, we are now playing knight takes because, again, this is more logical. We want to play with our bishop g5 ideas. And after bishop e6, where black's trying to castle again, we, of course, play bishop g5, stopping that idea. h6 now allows us to slip into f6 again. And we're simply actually just going to take on d4 here in a lot of lines, as well as have ideas of even knight g3. And you can look at the more tactical aspects of this in the theory section. The main move here is bishop d6. Again, the main recommendation when we're going for the new modern idea of h4. This stops ideas of anything happening on h2. And we're planning to simply take on d6, take on d4, getting a better pawn structure. Simple advantage. Now, black may be equal if he's very careful in these lines, but it's still equal with us showing some very interesting novelties. And they're very deep. We're not going to do it in a quick starter. You can check out the latest on these lines, our new ideas in that area of the course. So if we go back to e4, e5, knight to f3, knight c6, bishop c4. We've now really looked at knight f6. Here, we've got to go d4. What about bishop c5? Well, against bishop c5, we're castling now, first of all, because we can get our king safe. Now, after the main move, knight to f6, we're not going for d3, which is much more common, maneuvering long game. We're playing the immediate d4. Now, worth pointing out that pawn takes d4, e5 leads back to the Max Lang, which we just looked at. Knight takes is simply a mistake because a knight takes here with ideas of bishop e3, winning a piece. So bishop takes is key, and the point of our play is now we win the bishop pair and we play bishop g5 with f4, getting ready to be our next bit of ammunition to increase the threats. And this pin is really annoying for black here. f4 is a very scary move, and black has a number of ways to play. The 2 main moves being h6 and d6. Now, queen e7 might be tried here because black wants to get the queen to c5 when we play f4, but this is certainly nothing to fear. And now we should first of all develop our last piece, creating a threat on knight d5, which must be stopped. And now we play f4. f4 anyway. And this is extremely exciting. And again, we show in the theory section that white is the one pushing, white's the one with the advantage, black is the one having to defend this attack. Now, really, here, again, as we show, with these ideas, black has to be extremely careful where he puts his king. And if he plays queen c5, one more key move to remember is bishop takes f7. This is really, really nice. And the point of this move is that after we take here, black doesn't have any devastating discovered checks. And because we moved the king to this square, we have a lot of options where our queen comes to h5. So, for example, knight e6 is actually the best check. And after king here, again, this is one where I would suggest you go to the theory section, one of the most complex positions that we see throughout the course. But we prove that it's black who's really on the back foot. And after queen takes here, one of the key lines is bishop f6 and now rook f5. With the queen coming h5, the rook coming to f1, it's black who's in more danger. Now going back to bishop c5, castles. So we castle, knight f6, d4, bishop takes, we pin. What about if black tries to break the pin? h6, bishop here, g5. This leaves black in a lot of trouble, as we saw in the model game Christensen-Bachmann with the fantastic f4. Beautiful, stunning move that black is really struggling against here. The point being, if he takes our bishop, we take there. We're attacking two knights. We also have f7 as a threat. Black is basically losing here. If black tries pawn takes f4, he can't take with the other pawn because we win the knight. We have rook takes f4. Lovely. Keep going forwards. And after queen takes, we're only the exchange down, but we're completely winning because the bishop takes f6. One nice line being castles. Bishop takes, queen e8, bishop h8, checkmate, next move or so. So after castles, let's run through that again. Some nice lines there. Bishop g5. If h6, we go bishop h4 and g5, f4, very strong. If after bishop h4, black tries the more prudent d6, just try and develop, well, in this case, we of course continue with f4, and one of black's best lines here, as we saw in Dubov versus Rajabov, is bishop g4. And this is where he forces exchanges. This is one of black's best lines out of all the variations with e4, e5. But we're okay here. And now we're going to take on f6. Yes, the queen's come off. And this is a rather unclear situation. The other idea here, by the way, is c3. But a very interesting situation where we go into the following ending, where black is going to lose a pawn, but have two pawns and a rook for the minor pieces. And this is the kind of one very, very interesting to play. Dynamically equal, I think, is a very fair assessment. And this is something you're going to have a lot of fun playing. I like the two minor pieces. I would point out, if you think that's a little bit too risky, we also have c3 as a safer option here, which we look at in the theory. Now, as well as after bishop g5, h6 being possible, what about d6 straight away? Well, again, this is quite similar to the last lines we're looking at. The only difference being h6 and bishop h4 have not been played. And one point I would like to just show you in that last variation, if we get here, it does make a difference, this one. This is a better version for white, because after this taking on d8 here, rook takes d8 in this position. We got c3 again, which is Dubov's idea. But if we play that last line, which we saw, the difference here is now that black hasn't played h6. It's all very subtle. So after some capture here, we even have ideas of h4. And this h4 move would not work so well. Maybe we go knight d5 first. Let's put that one in there first. But this h4 idea would not work so well if it was a pawn on h6 because of g5. But in these positions, we can play this one. And I think this is a very nice way to play. Now, if black doesn't move the bishop to g4, but let's say tries to block things with bishop e6, as Mickey Adams, one of England's finest players, did against Musician, we can get long-term compensation after bishop e6 by taking on e5. And now a key idea here, again, in a lot of these lines, you don't panic. Knight to a3. This is another idea where the knight is coming to d5, f5, or g4. And queen e7, c3. Let's get rid of that knight. King h1, avoiding any check. And now we can see one of the ideas behind this. This knight is now looking for a way in. And you can also go rook f2 and just apply pressure here. Black's king is very weak. White has the advantage. Woof! So I think really that is e4, e5 for you. e4, e5, knight f3, you're now covered for those lines. And again, this quick start is a quick start for a reason. I want to make it as accessible for you as possible. We don't want to overcomplicate. You can do that later on when you get to the main stuff. But very fun lines. Now, what about the Sicilian? Well, against the Sicilian, we are going the wing gambit with b4. And this is already asking your opponent a question. What are you going to do? Now, if he doesn't take the pawn, there's many ways we can, I feel, be a little bit better. And the only way to challenge it is by taking here. And now we're going a3. And our idea is to get 2 pawns in the center. And if black doesn't do anything, or just develops very slowly, then our main idea will be, where do we put our pieces? Our main idea, where we put our pieces, is d4, bishop d3, knight takes a3, c3. Where does this knight go? This is just the key point, to e2, behind the bishop on d3, so that we can go f4, f5 later on. Now the main move here, so let's just show that. If they take here, we go d4. We're not necessarily in a hurry to take that one. Central pawns, if the knights come out, we can attack those knights. And if black plays d6, let's take that one with a knight. Another idea we often have is the knight coming to b5. Let's not forget it can come to c4, or in these maneuvering ideas we mentioned with a knight coming to e2, it can even come to c2 and around this way. Lots of ways in. Long-term compensation. Let's just show that one up. And now we've got this idea. There you go. This is the way we play. Long-term compensation without any doubt in the world here. Black is cramped in all of these positions. So they're quite nice. Really like this wing gambit, I have to admit. Now, b3 is a sideline, which we don't have to worry. We can take that one. And if black strikes out, we can take here. And we're going to just develop normally. b3 is the move where we get our pawn back. e5 has been recommended by Hari Krishna. And here we're going to try to attack that pawn as quickly as we can. So knight to f3. And this is slightly different to some of the other lines in the wing gambit. Bishop b2, keeping that idea. And now knight f6 is Hari Krishna's idea. Another sharp idea recommended in the killer Sicilian is queen b6. But here, very nice idea with knight takes e5. And black wants to take here when our bishop has to move to keep our knight defended. And after some a2 move, we can take on f7. And this is our brilliant sacrificial idea. And, you know, we've done a lot of work on these lines to make sure you're going to be guaranteed fun and attacks. And with the bishop coming in, yes, we don't have a lot of material for the sack piece, but we have a great deal of play with our pawns motoring through and brilliant pieces. Now, going back to Hari Krishna's idea, which is obviously key, I respect Hari Krishna a lot, is knight f6. And after this, we just take here. And now we play d4. And this is very exciting, but we're going to prove, and you can look at this a little bit deeper in there, that white's absolutely fine here. And now after b4 takes a3, the main line is d5, which I actually think is one of the more fun lines we get. So we're actually welcoming the main line. Another reason we're happy to play this. And we're going to take on d5. We have to stop the check on e5, so let's develop. e5, very much the main line, and now we're going to take on b4, and our idea is c3, knight to b5, d4. And we can see that after bishop takes b4, c3 is our recommended move here, and when the bishop moves, knight a3, and we're coming in with these two moves with a great deal of pressure. So in actual fact, after e4, I'm going to leave it there. That's the wing gambit covered. Very, very easy. I say covered in a quick way. Now, what about the other c-pawn move? Well, of course, we're going to go for the hillbilly. And this is one line where, again, it's very unanalyzed and it's a lot of fun. And after d5, bishop b3. The only way to refute a sacrifice is to take it. And the point in the hillbilly is queen over here, when black can either go g6, which I consider the main move, or e6. Now, if he plays e6, it's slightly more positional, but we're going to win our pawn back now without any worry. So knight c3, knight here, and now the main move, queen h4. And after knight b7, there's some ideas where you go f3 here, but taking the pawn is what we like. And in this kind of position, we are going to just develop very soundly. Knight f3, d4, castles. And unlike a normal Caro-Kann, black's bishop can't get out easily. So we've got black maybe into an uncomfortable situation for him because that bishop is dead. And if the knight goes to c5, important that you put your queen on e3. So when a capture here occurs, you have these ideas against a7. Now, in the hillbilly, where black plays the more critical g6, we're going queen h4 again. And our standard ideas in this position is knight c3, attack that pawn. And then we are playing for f3, and this is the key move. And if we can take the knight on f3, we're then either playing d3 or d4, up to you. Bishop over to h6, knight to g5, and we're trying to checkmate with all our pieces against the king. So let's show that. Knight f6 here is logical. Knight c3, bishop f5, f3, the key move. Pawn takes, knight takes, we're a pawn down, but we get a lot of fun here. d4 or d3, depending, we look at both of these moves. Castles, bishop h6, knight g5. And again, you can look at the model game with the players Manuel Berg versus Tiger Hillett Person, if you want to learn a little bit more about this. But a load of fun here. This is a very fun gambit, the hillbilly. And you can look at my YouTube channel for more of that. And really, the last thing we need to look at now is one of my favorite openings, the French defense. And here we're going to start by playing the advanced French. And now, after the main move c5, c3, it doesn't really matter which move order black plays. So let's say knight c6, knight here, and now queen b6. We're going for bishop d3, which is the starting move order of the old Milner-Barry gambit. But our new twist on this gambit is that after pawn takes pawn, we're not taking back on d4. And I have to admit, this is a position that I was very unaware of, being a French defense player. So it's something that Magnus Carlsen plays, but Johnny Hector is the champion of. We're actually castling now. And if he takes here, we're getting a Milner-Barry a couple of tempos up. One key idea is bishop e3 in this kind of position. And if he goes bishop d7 and he's still trying to get back into a normal Milner-Barry by, we don't take there, but this is what black wants. He wants this position, but we're not doing that. What we're doing now is playing rook e1, this idea of Johnny Hector. And I really like this idea. We're trying to wait for this one where we get that extra development in the Milner-Barry. And unlike the Milner-Barry, black's not easily swapping his knight off. And another important thing to remember here is that if the knight comes to this square in some positions, well, let's say black doesn't take on c3, which clearly helps us, but instead he plays knight e7, we're going h4. And again, we're not always just trying to kill here. We're actually trying to stop or make it tricky for black to get his king safe. That's what h4 is doing. We're trying to basically play against knight g6. Because of rook e1, that pawn is defended, and we're trying to just push that knight back so black can't get out his king position safe. And then when we have no more useful moves after this rook and pawn are got here, we are going for a plan of knight d2, knight b3, knight takes d4. And later on, if black's king is stuck in the middle, I would like to mention a very important way to open up the position is c3, c4. This is a key move to open lines. So we could say, like, you know, obviously black's played badly here, but if we went knight here now, then black's going to have to take this pawn at some point before our knight just comes around. And this is a slightly better way of black recapturing when the knight can't come here. And this kind of position, rook b1, knight comes to d4. Can even experiment with bishop a3 on this diagonal, but c4 is the way we open up the black king. Where can the black king go? Nowhere easily. So very interesting lines here in the Milner-Barry. This rook e1 I very much like. If black does take on c3, well, and play something like this bishop e3 move is something well worth considering. And in these positions, we can also play on both sides of the board h4, but also a3, b4, and knight a4, both sides. So the French defense, this is a very exciting way to play, I feel, with e5, c5. What if black plays bishop d7, the other main line? Well, against bishop d7, the great thing about our system is we still play in the same manner, bishop d3. The main moves, if black doesn't want to sacrifice in these lines, is bishop e2. But with bishop d3, we make it a lot harder for black to avoid the acceptance of our sacrifice. I used to play a line with f6, but when the bishop's on d3, f6 is just not working because our bishop is so much better. And after castles here, well, the black king, we don't want to take and free up the pieces, but here black's king is really in trouble because of the more advanced positioning of our bishop on d3. If he tries taking here, what would you play now? Just to make sure you get the idea of what we're trying to achieve in the French. What is your key move here? Well, the key move is not to take here. Do not play this. If you're taking here, you're forgetting the idea. The key idea in the French is really you take here back in only rare situations, but in this situation, you castle. Remember. And the point being now, queen b6, rook e1, goes back into the lines. We're playing as many useful moves as we can so that black might take here, because we want to take with a knight ideally. Our knight's better placed. If we run out of useful moves like h4, h5, we go knight d2 and we get that structure. And if black, let's say, if it takes here, we just show how this pieces can come out. Let's say black's queen stays here and he plays knight e7. Every case is individual. Bishop e3 doesn't have as much point because the queen's not attacked. But now I really like bishop g5. One of the nasty points of this move. Again, this is the philosophy behind our idea in the French. Make it hard for black to develop his pieces. And if he plays h6, this is winning on the spot. The knight coming into this square. And again, it's that stopping our opponent getting this bishop and this knight out, especially this knight. Look where that knight's going to go and try to stop it coming to its main squares. And after something like a6 here, well, rook e1 is this useful move to play with the much more activity. And we can play in both sides of the board, a3, b4, h4. We're not in a rush. We're keeping black constrained in these situations. I think you're pretty much covered there. You know, it is a quick starter guide for a reason, but I think for this course, our 1e4 move against the four main options, that's, I think, the overview I want to stick with. I think I'm happy with that. I hope you have a lot of fun playing these lines. Obviously, some of them are very deep theoretically, and we talked about how you should learn them at the start of this course. Maybe pick one reply at a time. I would start with e5. It's the biggest and the baddest option. Get comfortable with all your lines there. Obviously, with Chessable, I think this course is analysed in more depth than a lot of other ones out there. But if you're not sure, Put the positions on against a strong computer program. Play out the positions against a strong program so you get used to playing them, get used to the ideas if you're not sure. Practice the mood trainer, re-watch the videos for the ideas, and yeah, good luck. Enjoy yourself. I mean, this course I've done with Richard Palliser is, I think, a really good weapon for you. I think it's incredibly dangerous for black, but also it's supposed to be fun. So don't forget that. You're gambiting to have fun, to apply the pressure, get some quick wins, and enjoy yourself. Because after all, that's what chess should be about. So go and enjoy yourself with this Grandmaster Gambits course.